maybe it's not. I don't know.
It's a lot of difference between speaking here towards speaking at the back, right? In the slide.
No, both are good. I mean, of course, in the front is much better.
Okay.
The quality is pretty good, yeah. The Wi-Fi is good in Paris.
No, but we had to install extra Wi-Fi for this thing to happen. So yeah, it depends on the situation.
That's what I was telling you. Yeah.
We have fiber optic, but they cannot install here because they don't let us do the works from the Biennale.
Okay, so no fiber. Not if we are going at the old side.
Yeah, there is in Venice, but here there's too distance from the cabinet, and we had to do some digging work.
This is Jiyun.
Hi everyone.
She's usually broadcasting live for all the CC. She's been walking like I don't know how many kilometers yesterday, covering everyone.
We're just having some tech electricity. Just 1 second. The video.
We have about 12 participants in the room. We start the presentation. While we're waiting, I want to show you the outside of the Caregiving
Okay.
in Japan.
Wow. Yeah, that's really nice. So it's just a building?
In case the connection is getting bad,
Yeah, when you go outside. Who designed your
Japan Pavilion and German Pavilion is right next to us.
Okay, so this
Okay. We will do it on time, right?
Yeah, I'll start the meeting in at 7.
Okay. So just let me know when I think so. Ah.
This is good sound. Still.
leave it like very quiet now?
It's
It would
now in this
disturb?
moment during lunchtime is the moment it's more chaotic. Like it's a lot of to.
Okay.
But if you want, yes, I
Yeah,
can place
and
it
the kind of
very
background.
low.
Yeah. Maybe not. No, I'm sorry, we just started, we just leave it.
So just let me know when I should start.
Yep.
No, this is okay. It's fine.
It's, so because it's not.
Not the full screen.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
If I go full screen, it.
Yeah, the other one's better.
Yeah, because the Windows toolbar is.
Yeah.
But I think this is we can change only you.
No, everybody. Yeah.
This.
No.
The-
Vertical.
Okay. You can move it wherever you want.
Up
we-
on top. Thank you.
This is Canada. Hi. Is it Canada Francisco Guardi? Oh, the Guardi.
And can I see one more person? No.
No,
Okay.
it's not good.
Can I see myself? No. I have to see myself. Great, thank you.
Hello everyone. Good evening or good afternoon, depending on where you are. I'd just like to welcome all of you to the particular workshop that we have organized, collaboration between three pavilions at the Venice Biennale. My name is Wei Peng from Singapore, curator of this Singapore Pavilion. We have the Korean Pavilion and the Philippine Pavilion and ourselves in this particular workshop. And we entitled Too Long, Collaboration in Creative Practice. Our pavilions, Singapore Pavilion, Philippines, and Korean Pavilion, we share a certain common theme about inclusivity and about collaboration. And so we are very happy to bring to you this student workshop to bring all the three pavilions and some participants and curators to talk about what they see as collaboration or collaborative practices. So this is open to you to provoke thinking about the processes and system of designing spaces for collaboration, especially in and within the communities. And it is something that we feel very strongly about, especially for the theme of this Venice Biennale, as well as the post-pandemic situations. So in this 1.5 hours workshop, we'll see 4 presentations. Those are examples that span across the 3 countries that have inspired projects, and that we included this into the Venice Biennale. And then later we'll have a breakout for participants to have deeper into the semantic of collaboration and how it will reorientate thinking about design strategies for communal spaces. So this is also organized as part of the mini search organized by the Curator Collective, which was started by Hye-won, the curator for the Korean Pavilion, which is also with us today. So hopefully we will finish the workshop within an hour and a half. So let us first welcome the first presentation by Hye-won and Nam-woo from the Korean Pavilion.
Hello everyone. Welcome to Venice. Welcome to our session. And I am logging in from the Korean Pavilion Venice. And I'm thank you. And then the Philippines Pavilion. Also, we are collaborating together on this workshop. I'm delighted to participate. And I want to, the details of the introduction to the Korean Pavilion Future School will be done by Deputy Curator Nam-woo. And I'll be just explaining just a simple concept of why we have placed this future school in the Venice Biennale. We have converted the Korean Pavilion here to a school, to a future school where collective thinking, new ideas, new inventions of the future could be made by you, by students, by the next generation, collective together with us. So we have more than 50 programs participating together. We would have also participants logging in the later time of the program, and we have more than 50 program directors and 200 participants taking place together. So this is really a spirit of collaboration, and fumashi in Korean, which is of helping each other, doing a big more events, like that something cannot be done with single household or individuals. So this is in the spirit of that. So I would take this mic to Namu.
Yes.
Yes.
Sure.
Hi, Namu.
Hey, how are you? My name is Namu. I'm working for the Korean Pavilion for this 17th International Literature Exhibition. And right now, I'm sharing my screen, showing the main page of one of our important online exhibition program, and also the platform titled Future School Online. And the Future School Online is the central website and platform for Future School, which aims to capture the activities and conversation generated in the school during the Biennial Architecture 2012-1. And the site is the online counterpart of the physical exhibition of the Korean Pavilion. And also the showcases the work of all the exhibitors and participants in both text and images and videos. All the materials there are available in the online. And it is also online school that catalogs every courses offered by Future School, past and present. Besides the basic course information, the site also provides an interactive space, a communal board, where instructors and students can collaborate and talk to each other. Future School Online is also one of the official documentation of the Future School, and this is very important for us. The site features a function where the online content can be automatically reformatted, collated, and printed on demand, opening avenues for future archiving through professionally printed publication. Right now, I'm also very excited to share, let me see. Let me stop this. Because yesterday, we have a book, we had a first presentation about the first demo publication of Future School Online. The presentation was done by Andrew Leclerc, and as you can see, the the publication is compiled, all the programs they're representing the Christian school online. And as you can see, there is a specific timeline is stamped on the front cover, like August 27, 2012 on. The PDF was automatically generated at 7:30 a.m. And feel free to stop by the Korean Pavilion to check out the publication. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nambu. That's wonderful. Next, we'll have Alex and Suda sharing with us from the Philippines Pavilion.
Yeah.
Hi, can you hear us?
Hi, we'd like to welcome everyone. This is the Philippine Pavilion, and we're broadcasting live from Venice, and we're happy everyone can join. Today, we'd like to talk a little about our pavilion. The exhibition that we're showing here is called Structures of Mutual Support, and through our work, by the way, yes, I'm Sudar and this is Alex, and through our work, we are exploring traditions of mutual support and how they can inform the architectural practice. So it's the building that you see here. It's a library and a conflict mediation space that was designed and built through mutual support with the community in the Philippines. It was built on site, then shipped here to be part of the exhibition, but it will be dismantled and shipped back to the community after the exhibition.
So mutual support, these are traditions that exist in most cultures around the world. Whether it's been used for coping in the face of disasters or just in everyday life, it's kind of a tradition where people work together towards a common goal. You see it expressed in different cultures in different ways. In the Philippines, for example, it could be the moving of a house from one village to the other, like in this photo here. But it's not only about moving houses. It's also about harvests, such as in Tomachi, or the thatching of roofs and like the sort of food row. Personally, I'm from Norway. We call this dugnad, and to us, it's kind of important to look at how these traditions could be platforms to talk about and to create our built environment, but based on principles and understandings that belong to people, not to those in power, basically. But there's some interesting principles embedded in these traditions. They're very much about working collectively, face to face. They're very much about spending time together. They're very much about actually celebrating the work that we do together with food, with music, with dance. So these are kind of how we look at a different form of exchange rather than the kind of capitalist exchange that we see with kind of money being the kind of transaction. This one is more a commitment that you do to each other. Would you say something about bias? Or? Yep. Right. So basically, the pavilion presents a series of collaborations that we have with different communities. The building here being the latest with a community that built something together with us, but also the stories from other communities where we work through these traditions. This was a project we built in 2010 with a community in Pavilion. The building was built through by the invited community, and in that process, you kind of have the opportunity to identify principles, knowledge, experiences that are unique to the community and then be formative for architecture. That's a very important building for the community. But it was destroyed. It took 3 years. It had a super typhoon that destroyed Pavilion, super typhoon Haiyan. And when something happens like this, it's very common that these traditions are re-emerging. This is a way of coping when we have lost everything. And this is what happened. So the community that built this building together with us actually then organized us again to come back and to design and build back what we built. And this became a series of buildings where we actually managed to address some of the trauma that people experience, some of the kind of immediate experiences that comes with having gone through a typhoon. So these buildings become kind of an expression of that. And this is kind of the heart of what we're trying to get at, I think, in this process.
Yeah, exactly. So in a sense, we saw the design process itself of creating architecture as as a platform for this mutual exchange of knowledge and also sharing the stories about what they wanted their future facilities to be. So in effect, this is the result of that process. But at the same time, we also had to develop a common language together with the community so that we could all understand each other and speak in the same terms.
So we like to talk about architecture in terms of it as a process, right? So everything that we do, everything that we create, they're not just commodities or products, they're actually something that will change and transform over time. But the way that it transforms and changes over time depends on how it was made, or at least that's how we like to see it. So we think that it's important that the way that we build our built environment is by actually involving people in that process and to determine the values and the meanings that shape it. So for Sudhir and I, we have this process that we call learning, question, make, concept, design, and build. And these are a way for us to work with the community to identify the situation that we want to transform. To identify it as it is, to question how we want it to be, and to make alternatives. That then allows us to develop a concept and then a design and a project. Yeah.
So in other traditions, also in other collaborations that we do, we have explored different interpretations of what mutual support could be. In Vietnam, it's called Doi Pong, and we use that to create our textile and weaving cooperative, basically. And this is one of the test projects that we did with them in order to see what we could build together. And so it's a reconfigured house that will be built in Vietnam, hopefully soon.
There is something about the definition of resources. So, in the case of Vietnam, by working through these traditions, you're actually looking at a different set of values than those that you get from a shopping mall, right? This is what we have, this is what we can do with it. And this is kind of what shapes the kind of design process of the architecture.
Yeah.
We have projects similarly worked through Mutirao in Brazil. You see a project to the left there, which is about translating ideas, narratives, and stories into symbols. There's a story here in the exhibition from that project. Also in Norway, to the right there in the slide, you see a community house which will be finished next week and open on Saturday next week, where we kind of designed and built the project through the idea and the kind of construction doing that, which we call it. Yeah.
And finally, this is the process by which we went through to be able to create the library here. So we designed everything with the community. Some of the output here is through the workshop processes of trying to understand the community, trying to understand what we can build, even trying to understand the architecture in terms of drawing the sections at full scale to be able to understand or interpret how that would impact the sunlight, ventilation, the rain, and the conditions on site. So this is what we did through that, and at the end of the day, we were able to design and build this library together, and collectively, we're still trying to explore what these traditions could mean for other traditions around the world.
That's it.
Thank you.
No, but the point is that we actually have these traditions. We experience. This is from our lived experience. It's something we do every day, and we really want to get at the heart of that. So, like for us, I think in this workshop today, we really want to hear more from people. Yeah.
Thanks. Thank you so much. Thanks, Alex and Sudha. Fantastic. Next, we'll have Imran to present one of the exhibitions in Singapore Pavilion. Imran, please.
Sorry, I was still on mute. I was trying to download a PowerPoint that's online. Hold on.
Some people might think that I'm looking at the video already recorded that I'm performing, but this is live. We're doing a workshop at the moment, Tolong and between the Philippines, Singapore, and Korean Pavilion. So whoever's coming in, I'm sure they get a sense of what's happening. But sometimes I was in the back of the screen, and people thought I was just part of the exhibition.
So that's really nice to be on site.
So preparing, logging in from the market in Singapore,
Yeah.
having a meal.
Doing some food, yes. Yeah. Is it okay, Imran, or shall we go to?
Yes, it's okay. It's still opening, so it's a little bit slow. I think because I have too many windows open. Yeah.
Maybe Marianne or someone could explain again about why the workshop, the purpose of this workshop while we're waiting.
All right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Okay, let's start. So sorry about that. Okay. All right. Thank you everyone for joining us for this workshop, the participants in particular, and of course to our colleagues and friends from Korea and the Philippines. To begin our presentation, I will hand over to Kavi, who will begin with the first of three sections to our presentation. Kavi, please.
Yes. Yeah, so I think someone's voice coming in, but yeah. So hi, I'm Kavi, and together with Imran, we're the team behind Pulau Ubin is in the Singapore Pavilion. So we'll be presenting about Pulau Ubin, which is an offshore island with a small living community in a rural landscape, under the themes of reconsidering othering, knowledge and artifact, and working collaboratively. The next slide. Yeah, so just to give a brief geographical context, Singapore is composed of a main island and smaller satellite islands as bounded by the White Line. Pulau Ubin is located northeast, circled in red, and can only be accessed via a 30-minute bump boat ride from the main island of Singapore. Next slide, please. Yeah, so evident from the recent news coverage of Pulau Ubin, the island is commonly branded as Singapore's last kampung, or village in Malay, that offers rustic charm different from the city island. Next slide. So this othering phenomenon is not something new. As seen from the news article from 1961, where Pulau Ubin was already introduced as comparable to a Hawaiian paradise. Next slide. Pulau Ubin was largely kept as rural and unplanned until 1985, where there were acquisitions of land by the government for development purposes. Population numbers has dwindled due to such land policies and the withdrawal of provision of amenities to sustain living on the island. It was from the 2000s where there was a distinct stance to keep Pulau Ubin in its rustic state. Next slide, please. So by the time the NParks, National Parks Board, took over as the custodian of the island, the population has already dropped to less than 40. So as the focus is on plants and nature, the aspect of culture was unfortunately neglected in the beginning. Next slide, please. And with the continued imposition of the rustic image, there is unfortunately a lack of provision of basic infrastructure such as water and electricity, which implicate the residents' way of life, and the island remains depopulated today. So now I'll hand over to Paul.
So, sorry, my next slide. So, in the introducing our project, because there are this very few number of residents on the island, it is important to, engage with the residents and document what it is that, their way of life, their practices and their habits, because it is something that has, that is different from how mainland Singapore has modernized. So, yeah, in our project, we documented 4 Malay kampung houses, which are a vernacular typology. And in order to do this, to do a comprehensive documentation of the house, it's not just sufficient to be looking at the house as artifacts, but to be interacting with the residents to find out more about the history of the houses and also some of the habits and the practices that surround these houses. So in this sense, why I guess that's why we were also invited for this sharing session is to showcase this close interaction, the close communication between us as outsiders as well as the actual residents of the houses. So the two key important aspects in which that we were documenting is, like I said, the houses and artifacts, as well as the knowledge that is being surrounded by these houses. So you run the previous slide. Yeah. So for example, in the two images that on the left, it actually depicts one of the houses that we documented, which is we call it 760D. So it's a 100-year-old house on Ubin. So and we found out that there has been a lot of transformations that has happened to the house. The house has gone through a number of transformations due to the changing needs of the different generations of the family. So that is one example of documenting the houses as an artifact. But at the same time, by interacting with these residents, like I mentioned, there are certain building habits or building practices, or even just the identification of building elements based on the identification and the naming and the vernacular naming of these building structures that is something that escapes us today, because these are just terms and these are just practices that we don't engage in anymore. So by interacting with the residents, it is important because it is a knowledge that is escaping us now. So it is important to be documenting these things, to be documenting these aspects and this knowledge. So in the subsequent slide, another example of an artifact as well as the knowledge of the houses is embodied in this house of 22E. So this house is actually quite an interesting project which Dr. Imran will be presenting on, will be elaborating on slightly later. But before his presentation on the potentials of this house, I'll just give a little bit of a background information to it. So this house, number 22E, was owned by a family. It's owned by a family, and interestingly enough, this house did not exist on Ubin in its original state. It was actually previously brought over by the family from the previous house back in Kampung Darat, which is on the mainland island. So it's interesting to see how even houses and architecture can, it's not just seen as as an artifact in that one sole state. It is interesting to see how it can transform, it can even travel in space to enrich that history of not only the house but also the family. And so now I'll hand over to Dr. Imran to talk about the rest of the presentation.
Okay, thank you, Iqbal. So what we were given when we had 22E for one of our main focus areas for the project was the mandate to kind of, or the request to help with the documentation for the restoration of the house. And this was the condition of the house when we found it. But more importantly, when we were first contacted, there was not yet any meaningful dialogue with the former residents, partly because former residents had been actually evicted from these houses. So the connection or relationship between state and former residents, you could say, was a little bit, in need of some repair. So one of the first things we did was to actually get in touch with former house owners. It sounds like a very self-evident thing to do, but that was not what was going to happen yet at that time. And so through our conversations with them, slowly getting to know them, and of course explaining them what is this whole intention of reconstructing something they've been evicted from in the first place. So what happened as we spoke to them, we found out some really interesting aspects of the social history behind the house. So if earlier Iqbal had explained the architectural history behind one of the other houses, but this house, besides architectural characteristics, of course, which we also documented properly, we found that we can't go into details, but we found that historically this is a significant building in terms of the fact that the owner is a descendant of one of the pioneers who was given the permission by the aristocracy of Singapore to found a settlement on this offshore island. And it's connected to the royal family of Singapore. And incidentally, one of the ancestors of this particular family has his name on one of the streets. So, I mean, if you look at it from the historical, geographic, or cultural history point of view, it's really significant. And it's also interesting that one of the intentions, actually, original intentions of restoring this house is because it was seen by the person who wanted to do this as a counterpart to another house museum that had already been taken up as a project by the state a few years earlier, which was incidentally, you must understand that in Singapore, the society is multi-ethnic, or in Singapore we have this strange term multi-racial. So that means multi-ethnic, so there's the Chinese ethnic group and in this case, a generic label for the Malay, both are generic labels, Southern Chinese actually, and Malay. So these groups, therefore, they are quite different in terms of their cultural practices, but their house culture is quite actually shared. So one of the interesting things would be that this house is meant to represent Malay counterpart to the Chinese House Museum that has already been taken care of and produced in this way on Pulau Ubin. And so our last slide for our sharing today is this kind of project opened up the opportunity on several fronts. So one of them has to be the fact that in Singapore, for the longest time, wooden construction, houses in wood, did not have a place in the regime of construction. So you're not supposed to, or if you take apart a wooden building, you cannot put back together. There are no regulations for it. Basically, it's illegal. It's not allowed. And so we had to get around this, and it was necessary because of the scenario to get political tie-in, and we had to present and explain the significance and so on. I mean, it is a very interesting process. It's still ongoing. The construction, the reconstruction of this house is still ongoing as we speak. And just a few days ago, in conversation with the contractors, with the carpenter who's building it in neighboring Malaysia, which is a different country from Singapore, and so on. So it's really an exciting one, and particularly so because this house is seen as the pilot project, a test bed for future projects of its kind, which previously would not have been possible at all. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Imran. Yeah, so our last presentation is by Alicia, and Alicia will be presenting Care Index from the Singapore Pavilion.
Hi everyone, thank you so much. So I'm going to be sharing a project called the Care Index. So you can also visit it online, careindex.net. So this project is actually a research project that explores different modes of listening, connecting through embodied experience. Yeah, so this project actually kickstarted quite recently during the COVID times. So just in December 2020, I started a very simple open call, which anyone can participate. So all of you here are very welcome to visit the website and contribute your submissions of gestures of care. So I'll elaborate a little bit more about that. I wanted to also just share a little background about why I started getting very interested in this idea of an embodied experience. So in 2018, I actually had this chance to be involved in an art show called Personally Speaking. So there were 8 artists who were involved, and I was one of them. And we were asked to respond to this theme of caregiving. And I thought immediately that I wanted to work with a group of caregivers whom I came into contact with through a support non-profit group called Caregivers Alliance. And during that time, when I first met this group of caregivers, I noticed that it was really a wonderful gathering of people sharing experiences. So there was a lot of verbal sharing, a lot of connecting through listening to other people's experiences. But one thing I found that could be very beneficial to looking at this idea of the weight of caregiving, and also allowing caregivers to experience a space of that's their own, through, after many years of giving and sort of being there for other people, was there a possibility of creating space for themselves? Yeah, so this, this opportunity to work on this project for a year began, started getting me to think a lot about it. So for this particular project called Between Earth and Sky, which was the starting point of the CARE Index, I worked with a mother and daughter artist pair, Shada Harrison and her mother, Ajunta Anwari, and together we were facilitating these workshops for the caregivers. So here are some screenshots of some of the working sessions. So these were all pre-COVID, so you can see that we were all in the same space, unmasked, and really looking at coming back to the body, and what might it be like for caregivers to also experience this idea of expressing their narratives and their stories through the body. Yeah, so what happened over a year was that we hosted these workshops, sometimes in the studio space, sometimes in the caregivers' homes, because understandably some of them cannot actually leave their daily duties as caregivers. So in the end, what we came up with was a series of videos which actually documented the caregivers' experiences through the body. Yeah, and they were all, what was really amazing about this experience for us was noticing the symbolic way that each caregiver could express their creativity, and at the same time also, relieve them of some of the stresses that their bodies carry from the act of daily caregiving. So these are just some film stills from the work that was done. And this really sort of laid the foundation for the CARE Index, which is my current project. So I just wanted to show this poster again. And initially, before the lockdown in Singapore, I had the chance to host my very first physical workshop for arts practitioners, to also invite them to try out working with the body, and the fundamental question that we were exploring was whether it's possible for us to actually transfer this sense of connection, well-being, and also different kinds of sensations that we feel through our own personal gestures. And if we invite somebody else to actually try it out, will they also be able to embody it? So this was one of the central questions that I had when I was starting out in this process. So this was one of the first physical workshops, but subsequently, when the COVID restrictions went up, then I actually started hosting these workshops online. So the most recent one that I did was with collaborators in India, as well as some of the collaborators in Singapore. And what was sort of connected these practitioners was that they all worked in infrastructures that provide care. So whether it's educational institutions, healthcare, or the frontline workers, as well as non-profit space of caregiving. So what I'm going to do later in the breakout group is actually to invite those of you who are in my breakout group to actually try out a portion of this workshop. So you will have a chance to embody some of these scores that were shared from the working group. Yeah, so this is an ongoing project, and hope to share more with you eventually. So that's all from me. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Alicia. A1 was saying that whether we can stretch before the start of the next session.
Sure.
But I
can do some exercise.
Yes, become a stretcher. Yeah. Now we are going to break out into 4 groups, and Marianne will help facilitate that. And so thanks so much for all the presentations. And the 4 groups will be sharing and chairing by the 4 presenters or presenter teams, so that we're able to discuss and maybe to talk more deeply into their project. And again, like what Alex said, to have some ideas of how to perhaps move forward. So Marianne will be doing that, and she'll be sending invitation for the breakout.
Thank you.
Hello, how are you?
Oh, good.
Very good. Can you guys all turn on your camera and unmute? Okay, thank you.
It's here, but maybe then it's not here.
Great.
네, 가서 내가 빨리 아니요, 저희
Great.
Hello, everyone.
Okay. So thank you for joining us. I'm not sure, how you guys have come to this, joining this specific the workshop place where the Korean Pavilion and the theme for today's workshop is generating dialogue. This dialogue has been play a really important role for sculpting and creating the atmosphere of the Korean Pavilion exhibition in Venice and also the Future School Online. Right now we have done 9 generative dialogues so far, but additionally we have done more, having a one-on-one conversation in creator Ewan and with the Future School artists, exhibitors, work program directors, and so and right now we are proceeding to generate dialogue, and the dialogue itself doesn't have any specific rules and doesn't have any specific agenda or themes whatsoever. It's just gathering in one place via online, say hello to each other because we all have a different background. I guess you guys all have a architectural background, right? But for me, I'm actually not. I don't have an architectural background, but I do have a visual media background. I think there are lots of similarities between the major numbers. Everything is come together for collaborating with these different disciplines. So Hewan is going to briefly talk a little bit more about the generated dialogue, and we're gonna move on to next. So we would like to hear more from you guys. And the 30 minutes workshop is, definitely really short amount of time to get to know each other more. But hopefully we will be able to understand more when the workshop is over. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Great to have you in this workshop. It's a collaboration between Philippines, Singapore, and Korean Pavilion, and I'm in Venice now in the Korean Pavilion. So I'm welcoming you here. And yes, so I'm looking at the screen of the Future School Online. And before we go into this online, there is another screen that is named from Zoom under my name. The voice is coming from here, but I could just want to have to share a quick tour of this space. In a way, this is also a collaborative space. It's what I call the interior public space. And everybody can come here, have their time, running workshops, and there's another room for ventilation. So I'm going to just pin the screen of where you're looking at yourself. You're being exhibited or you're being shown in the space. Oh, we have our future school cat visiting. And this is our probably if you're in space, have your locker space and things to store. There is a display of the work pinup space and a workshop area here with all the programs, and then there are screens that one can plug in to use. Yes, so this is a setting that you're being shown. I'm sure you are fine with sharing screens, but if you have uncomfortable sharing your face, it's okay to switch off, but I think it's good to show up. It's almost like being in the space of the school. So we will conduct, and I think this we can run this without the live. Thank you so much. And and I think what is important, we ran, and you could see the transporter lab, which Ikwan has joined actually during the COVID time with her, and she's now assistant curator for the Korean Pavilion, became part of the future school. And what has happened, and I'm sure he could also share some thoughts on this, is that it's really, the discussions are run and coordinated, initiated by students. And we are more like the infra or a platform for you to be having discussions, also ask questions. And then all the resources that is shared in the online, it's for you to also have a look during the time that you have. And also there are Q&A sheets that you can post questions, and there are program directors who you're posing questions can answer your questions. So this is really, and there are a series of dialogue sessions that we call it Genif Dialogue. And this is really to bring kind of awareness and also collective thinking in a way that we are all, bounded by the screen, and we are also very focused in what we are interested in, what we are doing. So these Genif Dialogue and how we are gathering now is really about being interested in what's happening outside your boundary. We talked about the transporter, but it's also between my body and what I think, my perception, kind of beyond that, and expanding the field. And in that sense, I think Damo will also curate this session, but this is really about listening, but also sharing ideas and thoughts together. And before we move on, I think, before we have your introduction, Namu could share a little bit about what Pumashi is. It's a Korean term, and I'm sure you have similar terms in your own, where you are from. So this is about shared working, so Namu will explain, and then we'll go into a session where everybody introduce yourself, and then this all will go. Yes, and we are not recording the session, right? Are we recording? Anyway, so welcome, and to Namu. Thank you.